A weary single mother shelters a mysterious girl for one night, unaware she's a runaway heiress. As seasons pass, quiet kindness transforms them both, weaving a found family from sorrow, secrets, and second chances. Some disappearances lead not to loss, but to home. Before we begin, if you believe in healing, in chosen families, and the quiet magic of kindness, subscribe and let's walk this path together. Snow had started falling by late afternoon, soft and slow as dust in an old attic. Claire Newman didn't notice at first. She was too busy trying to coax her old Toyota into life with one hand while balancing a grocery bag and Liam's lopsided school project on the passenger seat. The engine coughed once, twice, then gave up, and for a moment, everything fell quiet. The kind of quiet that presses in behind your ribs. The kind that made Claire feel like the whole world was just waiting. She rested her forehead on the steering wheel and closed her eyes. Another day, another thing that didn't work. Liam's project slid off the seat. A diorama of the solar system made from glued pasta and cotton balls, his pride and joy. She reached for it gently, whispering a sorry as she wiped the smudge off Saturn's ring with the edge of her sleeve. There was glue still drying on her thumbnail. She'd stayed up the night before helping him paint the stars, even though she'd had a shift at the diner in 6 hours. That was how it went. One hand in the future, one in the past. Claire somewhere in between, trying not to slip. The snowfall had thickened by the time she got home. Her boots left soft prints across the parking lot, like pressed flower petals. The building where she lived was quiet. Too quiet. Only the hum of a faulty porch light and the distant rumble of a train broke the silence. Apartment 2B was on the 2nd floor. The lock stuck like always. She jiggled it twice before it gave way with a reluctant click. Inside, the air was stale and a little too cold. The heater had kicked off again. She didn't bother checking the thermostat. Instead, she dropped her bag by the door and took a deep breath, catching the scent of cinnamon from the candle Liam had begged her to light last night. It was one of their little rituals. Cinnamon candle on hard days, vanilla on better ones. Today was cinnamon. Again. "Liam," she called softly. Her voice caught on the edges of the empty air. He peeked his head out from behind the couch, wrapped in his superhero blanket, eyes wide. "I made you tea," he said, grinning. "It's mostly hot." Claire smiled, tired but real, and walked over to kiss the top of his head. "You're the best part of every day, you know that?" He shrugged in that way only kids do, already turning back to his cartoon. She sat down beside him and took the mug. Lukewarm chamomile. A tea bag dangled off the side like a forgotten flag. It was perfect. They didn't talk much during dinner. Leftover soup, toast, a shared orange from the bottom of the fridge. Claire watched Liam more than she ate. Watched the way his cheeks dimpled when he smiled at the TV. The way he held his spoon like a sword. She wondered if he knew how hard she was trying. If kids sense things like that. Later, after the dishes were done and Liam was tucked into bed with his astronaut bear, Claire stood by the window, staring out at the snowfall. The world looked cleaner somehow in white. Softer. Like maybe it could forget what had been broken. She hugged her cardigan tighter around her, the one with the frayed sleeves and the missing button. That's when she saw her. A girl, barely more than a silhouette, sitting alone at the edge of the bus stop across the street. No umbrella. No coat thick enough for December. Just a light sweater and jeans. Arms wrapped around herself like scaffolding. Claire watched for a long time, thinking maybe someone was coming for her. A car. A bus. Anything. But nothing came. The clock said 9:46 when she slipped on her boots and grabbed her keys. Liam was already asleep. She'd be quick. The snow crunched under her feet, crisp and forgiving. As she neared, the girl looked up, startled. Her eyes were wide, rimmed red from the cold, or crying. Hard to tell. "You okay?" Claire asked, her voice low and even. The girl hesitated, then nodded too quickly. "Yeah, just waiting. For someone. For no one, maybe. It wasn't an answer. Not really. But something in her voice, clipped, polite, terrified, rang familiar. Claire hesitated. She didn't do this. Didn't bring home strays. Didn't invite the world in. But there was something about the way the girl's hands trembled beneath her sleeves. Something in the quiet she carried, like an echo waiting for a room. "Come on," Claire said. "You'll freeze out here." The girl didn't move. "I'm not a murderer," Claire added gently. "But if I was, I'd be a really tired one, and probably not worth the effort." The girl almost smiled. Almost. She followed Claire across the street. Inside, the warmth wasn't much better, but it was something. Claire handed her a blanket, then poured the last of the cocoa mix into 2 chip mugs. Liam didn't stir. The girl sat gingerly on the edge of the couch, as if afraid to leave a mark. "Name's Claire," she said, settling across from her. "Sophie," the girl replied, voice soft. Claire nodded. "Well, Sophie, you've got a couch and a roof for the night." Silence stretched between them. Not awkward, just thick with things unsaid. "I had a fight," Sophie said finally, "with my family. I walked. Thought I'd go further. I didn't." Claire didn't ask questions. Not yet. Instead, she pointed to a photo on the shelf, a worn frame with a younger Liam grinning wide, front teeth missing. "That's my son. He's 8. We watch cartoons and eat cereal for dinner more than I'll admit." Sophie's eyes lingered on the photo. "He's lucky." Claire let out a breath through her nose. Half a laugh. "I hope so." They drank in silence. Sophie curled under the blanket, small and tense like a rabbit in a storm. Claire watched her for a long moment, then turned off the lamp. That night, the snow kept falling. It blanketed the streets and the cars, the rooftops and trees. It softened the edges of everything, as if the world itself was trying to be kind. In the morning, Liam was the first to find Sophie. "Mom, there's a girl on our couch," he whispered like it was a great discovery. Claire stirred from her bedroom doorway. "I know, sweetheart. She's a friend." Liam stared. "She looks like a princess." Sophie blinked awake, rubbing her eyes with the back of her hand. She looked up and smiled at him, slow and hesitant. "I'm Sophie." "Liam," he said proudly. "Want toast." And just like that, the shape of the day changed. Sophie stayed through breakfast. She made scrambled eggs like she'd done before, but still asked where the salt was. She complimented Liam's project, listened as he talked about Saturn and Jupiter and how Pluto should still be a planet. Claire watched from the kitchen, quiet, trying to make sense of it all. When Liam was off to school with his backpack, half-zipped and his coat askew, Claire turned to Sophie. "You're not just a runaway, are you?" Sophie paused. "I'm not ready to talk about that." Claire nodded. "You don't have to. Just don't lie." "I won't." That was enough. For now. Sophie helped fold laundry, sat cross-legged on a rug as she rolled Liam's socks into little bundles. She moved like someone used the big rooms. Marble, polished wood. Yet here she was, folding Spider-Man pajamas in a 2-bedroom walk-up that smelled faintly of old paint and cinnamon wax. Claire handed her a mug of tea. Sophie cradled it like something sacred. "I think I forgot how to breathe there," she whispered, not looking up. Claire didn't ask what she meant. She just sat beside her and let the silence settle between them like snow. Soft, still, forgiving. That night, after Liam had drifted off to sleep and the dishes had been put away, Sophie stood by the window, watching the snow. Claire joined her, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. They stood like that for a while, saying nothing, just watching. "Did you run from something?" Claire asked eventually. "Or to something?" Sophie didn't answer, but her eyes filled with something heavy. "You're not the first girl who's ended up in a stranger's apartment, hoping the world would look different in the morning." "I just wanted to feel small," Sophie said. "Not important. Not watched. Just small." Claire nodded. "I know that feeling. Sophie turned to her. Why'd you help me? Claire shrugged. Because someone once helped me, when I had nothing, and because it matters. The moment passed gently, without fanfare. Later, after Sophie had gone to bed, Claire opened her nightstand drawer and pulled out an old letter, yellowed at the corners. She didn't read it. She just held it. A note from her mother, written years ago, just before she disappeared from Claire's life. You'll be okay. You always were the strong one. I was just the wind. Claire folded it back carefully and slid it into its place. Outside, the snow fell on quietly. Inside, something else began to thaw. It snowed again the next morning. Thicker this time, like the sky had finally decided to let go of everything it had been holding in. Claire stood at the window, her hands wrapped around a chipped blue mug. The steam curled softly against her face, and for a moment she didn't move, just watched the street below, silent and blanketed. There was something sacred about the quiet after snow, like the world had paused long enough to breathe. Behind her, Sophie stirred. She moved carefully, like someone not used to being seen at rest. Blanket still pulled around her shoulders. She sat up, blinking against the pale light. Claire turned, smiling gently. Morning. Sophie offered a nod in return, the kind that felt borrowed, like politeness learned more than lived. Claire poured her a cup of tea without asking, the same kind she brewed every morning for years. Faded chamomile, steeped too long, sweetened with a single sugar cube. It wasn't much, but it was how you said you're safe here, without saying anything at all. Sophie took it with both hands. Thank you. They sat at the table, across from each other, not quite touching, but tethered by the hush between sips. Claire didn't ask where Sophie had come from. Not yet, but she noticed the fine gold chain hidden beneath Sophie's collar, the way she flinched at sudden sounds, the way her eyes scanned the room, not like she was curious, but like she was counting exits. I could use some help at the diner later, Claire said, breaking the quiet with a voice soft as linen. It's nothing fancy, just prepping pies and bussing tables. You wouldn't get paid, but they're staff meals and heat. Sophie didn't answer right away. Then, slowly, I can help. Claire didn't smile. She just nodded, like an agreement had been made that went deeper than what was said. That afternoon, they walked together through the snow-crusted sidewalks, past the gas station and the faded mural of a sunflower someone had painted long ago. Sophie wore one of Claire's old jackets, a bit too loose at the shoulders, sleeves rolled twice, and Liam's extra scarf, striped and unraveling at one end. She looked like she belonged nowhere and somehow here all at once. At the diner, Sophie kept quiet. She washed dishes with practiced hands and took orders when it got busy. Claire caught glimpses of her through the past window, a ghost moving between booths and buttered toast. People looked at her, not because she was strange, but because she wasn't. There was a polish to her movements, a grace that didn't match her story. Claire noticed. She noticed how Sophie folded napkins into sharp triangles without looking, how she never touched the money in the tip jar, how, when a man in a business suit sat too close, her body stiffened like it had remembered something it didn't want to. That night, back at the apartment, Liam spread out his schoolwork across the floor, talking about constellations and how one day he'd go to the moon. Sophie knelt beside him, asking questions in a soft voice, letting him lead. She laughed when he pointed to a crooked star he named Mom. Claire watched them, heart full and aching. There was something in Sophie that bent toward children without effort, a gentleness, like she'd had to teach herself how to be soft again. After Liam had fallen asleep, Sophie lingered in the living room. Claire handed her a blanket. You don't have to stay quiet, you know, not with me. Sophie hesitated, fingers fidgeting with a frayed edge. I used to be a violinist, she said suddenly. When I was younger, that's what they told me I'd be. Claire didn't respond, just sat, legs tucked beneath her, waiting. Sophie's voice came slow, like unspooling ribbon. My family, they don't understand quiet. They fill silence with expectations, with dinners and deadlines and perfect grades. I was the daughter of someone, not just a girl. Claire listened. I walked out during a gala, Sophie whispered. In heels I hated and a dress someone else picked. I slipped out the back, past the photographers. No one saw. Claire studied her. They'll be looking for you. I know. Is that why you made that call in the bathroom yesterday? Sophie flinched, but nodded. I didn't say who I was. I just needed to hear something familiar, even if no one answered. Claire reached across the space between them and placed her hand gently over Sophie's. Not demanding, not pressing, just present. Sophie blinked, as if surprised to still be held. Claire understood something then. Not the whole of it, but the shape of it. That Sophie had run not from danger, but from a kind of prison dressed as privilege. Sometimes the gold bars are the hardest to leave. The days passed quietly. Sophie stayed. She helped Liam with homework, chopped carrots too precisely, and learned to fix the heater with a swift thump to the side panel. Claire found herself smiling more. They developed little rituals. Sophie lit the candle now. Claire made breakfast. Liam sang while brushing his teeth. They were three people caught in the gentle web of routine. Not perfect, not planned, just enough. But at night, Claire still heard Sophie cry sometimes. Never loudly, never long. Just the sound of someone remembering how to feel. On the sixth night, Sophie left something on the table. An envelope, sealed, no name. Claire stared at it for a long time before opening it. Inside was a single page, a handwritten note. If I disappear, thank you for showing me that not everyone wants something from me. That kindness doesn't always cost. You made me feel human again. Claire folded the note slowly, the way one might fold a prayer. Sophie was still there in the morning, but something had shifted. Her hair was brushed neatly. Her bag was packed, and her eyes, though calm, were full of goodbye. Claire didn't ask. She just hugged her, long and wordless. Liam handed Sophie a drawing. It's you, he said proudly. And me and Mom were in space. Sophie took it with trembling fingers. Thank you, she whispered. Then turned to Claire for the night, for the space, for not needing more. Claire's eyes glistened, but she only nodded. Come back when you need quiet again. The door closed behind her like the end of a chapter. But in her absence, something remained. The scarf she'd worn hung on the coat rack. The candle still burned. And on the fridge, Liam's drawing of the three of them in orbit, unlabeled but known. Claire sat on the couch that night with the envelope in her lap. She read the note again, then placed it beside her mother's letter in the drawer. 2 pieces of paper. 2 stories of women who left. And the quiet, aching hope that one might return. The snow came heavy that week, thicker than before, like a hush settling over the town, softening everything it touched. Claire stood behind the counter at the diner, wiping down the last of the mugs. The evening rush had passed, leaving behind only the hum of the refrigerator and the faint echo of someone's forgotten laughter. She glanced toward the window. Streetlights blurred through the frost on the glass. Winter always held a kind of loneliness in its silence, one Claire had learned to live with, one she had tried, briefly, to fill. It had been 2 weeks since Sophie left. 2 weeks, and yet the memory of her still hung in the corners. Her scarf still draped on the coat rack, her folded napkin still found in the back drawer, perfect triangles untouched by time. Claire didn't talk about her, not to Liam, not to the other waitresses. But sometimes, late at night, she'd hold the letter again, reread it, try to find some hidden thread she'd missed. One evening, just before closing, a man walked in. Expensive coat, rain-darkened boots. The kind of presence that turned quiet heads, not from fear, but familiarity, as though the air shifted to accommodate him. He sat down at the far end of the counter, ordered tea. chamomile with 1 sugar cube. Claire's hand paused on container. She turned slowly, the weight in her chest heavy and sudden. He looked like Sophie. Older, sharper, but unmistakable. He didn't smile, just studied her with eyes that had seen too much and understood little. "You're Claire," he said after a moment. "Claire Newman." She nodded. "I'm looking for someone. I think she stayed with you. Briefly. She may have used a different name." Claire's voice came quiet. "Why are you looking for her?" A pause. His eyes flicked down to the T. "I'm her brother. Our family, we've been searching. She disappeared from a gala 3 weeks ago. No word. No note. My parents are losing their minds." Claire's hands trembled faintly as she set the mug before him. She didn't leave a name. "But she was here." Claire sat across from him, not answering, not denying, just watching. "She's different," he said, a flicker of guilt passing across his face. "Always has been. Quiet, artistic, sensitive. My father didn't know what to do with that. None of us did." Claire leaned forward, her voice low. She wasn't lost. She just didn't want to be found. He flinched just slightly. She ran from everything. Our home, our world, our name. "And maybe she needed to," Claire replied. Silence settled between them, soft as snowfall. He reached into his coat and placed something on the counter. A photo. Claire looked at it. Sophie, smiling younger, her eyes still holding a shine not yet dulled by obligation, standing between tall buildings in a dress too stiff for her shoulders. "She ever talk about the violin?" he asked. Claire nodded. "She used to play at night when she couldn't sleep. Not for anyone. Just to breathe." Claire met his gaze. "She never mentioned you." He took a slow sip of tea. "That doesn't surprise me." Another pause. "She changed when our mother died," he continued. "She grew quieter, more careful, like she was trying not to take up space. I thought she was being dramatic. Turns out she was breaking." Claire's throat tightened. "She stayed with us 6 nights, she said. She helped my son with his homework, learned to fix my heater, folded napkins into perfect triangles. She didn't ask for anything." The man's eyes glistened. "That sounds like her. She left me a letter, not a name, not a plea, just gratitude." He nodded slowly. Claire took a breath. "She's not someone you find by searching. You have to wait for her to want to be found." He didn't argue, just sat with that truth, the way you sit with something you wish you'd known sooner. When he left, he didn't ask for directions. He left the photo behind. Claire tucked it into her drawer beside the letter. 2 echoes of a girl she wasn't ready to stop missing. Days passed, then a week, then another. Winter deepened. The apartment grew colder, and Claire took to lighting the stove burner for warmth in the mornings. Liam asked fewer questions. He had grown used to people coming and going. But one night, just after midnight, a knock came at the door. Not loud, not rushed, just soft. Claire opened it and stood frozen in the golden spill of hallway light. Sophie stood there, cheeks flushed in the wind, hair tangled beneath a knit cap, eyes wide and fragile. "I didn't know where else to go," she whispered. Claire stepped back. "You're home." Sophie crossed the threshold like someone entering sacred ground. She dropped her bag, boots wet with snow, and just stood there, arms hanging uselessly at her sides. Claire pulled her into a hug. Sophie didn't move at first. Then she melted into it, shaking quietly. "I saw him," she said against Claire's shoulder. "My brother." Claire nodded. "I thought I could go back. Just for a day. Try to explain." But they didn't want explanation. They wanted the version of me I left behind. She stepped back, voice trembling. "And I realized that girl's gone." Claire brushed a tear from Sophie's cheek with her thumb. "You didn't need to explain," she said. "You just needed to come back." Sophie stayed again. This time longer. They didn't speak of leaving anymore. Instead, they lit candles together. made pancakes with too much syrup, watched Liam build rocket ships out of cereal boxes, and slowly, Claire noticed Sophie begin to take up space. She danced while cooking, laughed more freely, started humming while folding laundry. One night, Claire walked past Liam's room and paused. Inside, Sophie sat at the edge of his bed with a small, battered violin. Her bow moved gently across the strings, and the sound that filled the room was raw, aching and impossibly beautiful. Liam lay curled beneath his blanket, eyes wide. Claire didn't move, just watching the doorway, breath caught in her chest. When Sophie finished, she looked up. "I found it in the thrift store," she said. "Needed some repairs, but it still remembers me." Claire stepped inside, slowly, sat beside her. "It's not just a violin," she said. "You remember yourself now, too." Sophie smiled. Not a sad smile, not a ghost of something, but full, present. "I think this is who I was always supposed to be." Claire reached out and placed her hand over Sophie's. No words, just warmth. That night, after Liam had fallen asleep, Sophie brought out a second envelope, this one sealed with wax. Claire hesitated before opening it. Inside was a letter written in fine, elegant script. But it wasn't from Sophie. It was from her brother. "Claire, thank you for showing her what we never did. I still don't understand her, but I want to. If she's willing, we'll try again. This time on her terms. No demands. Just a place at the table if she ever wants one." Claire handed the letter to Sophie, who read it in silence. Tears spilled down her cheeks, not from pain, but from a fragile weight of being seen. Finally, without having to earn it, Sophie folded the letter and pressed it to her chest. "I don't know if I'll go," she said softly, "but it helps knowing they'll wait." Claire nodded. "You don't owe them a return, just a piece of peace." Sophie looked around the small apartment, at the candlelight, at the fading stars Liam had taped to the ceiling. "I think I already found peace," she said. And when she said it, she meant it. The snow began to melt in March. Not quickly, not with spectacle, just a slow surrender. Patches of earth revealing themselves like shy truths after a long silence. Claire stood on the front steps of the apartment, mug in hand, watching a single drop fall from the gutter and disappear into a puddle below. It was the first morning in weeks that didn't bite at her skin. Behind her, laughter drifted from the kitchen. Sophie and Liam making cinnamon toast, arguing over how much sugar was too much. Sophie always let him win. It had become a ritual now. Sophie rising early, Liam dragging his blanket into the kitchen, Claire making coffee and humming low, like her mother once did. Routines had returned, but they were different, softer, not out of necessity, but out of care. One night, Sophie brought home a potted rosemary plant. Its scent filled the corners of the kitchen, even when the windows stayed shut. "It's for grounding," she'd said. "Smell it when the world gets loud." Claire had nodded, though she didn't yet realize how often she would need it. Another night, Claire came home from the diner to find her old sewing machine uncovered, its dust blown away. Sophie had repaired a tear in Liam's backpack and stitched a little star into the seam. He never mentioned it, but Claire caught him tracing it with his fingers on the walk to school. Bit by bit, the apartment had begun to hold stories again. Not just memories, but promises. Claire often found Sophie curled on the couch reading books from the local library. Sometimes nonfiction, but mostly old children's stories. Ones with talking animals and gentle magic. "I like the ones where no one dies," she said one night, "where the monsters just needed a nap." Claire smiled. "Me too." Spring didn't arrive all at once. It came in small kindnesses. A robin on the window, the grocery clerk remembering Claire's name, Sophie laughing so hard she snorted and didn't apologize. And on one warm Friday, Claire came home to music, not from the radio, but from the violin. Sophie sat by the window, bathed in the soft gold of late afternoon, playing something delicate and aching. It wasn't a song Claire recognized, but it felt like something familiar, like a lullaby half remembered from childhood. When she finished, she turned, surprised to see Claire in the doorway. "I was playing What It Feels Like Here," she said softly. Claire crossed the room, sat beside her, and whispered, "Play it again." So she did. Outside, the world softened. Inside, a girl who once vanished now stayed. And then, in early May, a letter arrived. Sophie found it in the mailbox, her name, her real name, written in her brother's careful hand. She didn't open it immediately. She placed it on the mantel beside the rosemary, let it sit there for 3 days. On the 4th, she opened it at dawn. Claire sat with her on the steps, barefoot and wrapped in a shawl, while Sophie read in silence. The letter wasn't long. It didn't beg, didn't scold. It simply said, "We are learning. It's slow, but we are. If you ever want to teach us more, we're listening." Sophie folded it neatly and smiled, her eyes brimming but unbroken. "They're trying," she said. Claire touched her shoulder gently. "And that matters." Later that day, Liam asked Sophie to come to school for Family Day. Claire hesitated, but Sophie answered first. "I'd love to." She braided her hair for the first time in months and wore a pale blue dress that caught the light. She brought lemon cookies wrapped in twine. Claire watched from a distance as Liam beamed and tugged Sophie by the hand through the hallway like he was showing off a treasure. One of the teachers leaned toward Claire. "Your sister?" Claire smiled faintly. Something like that. Afterwards, they went for ice cream, even though the wind still carried a chill. Sophie chose pistachio. Liam spilled chocolate down his sleeve. Claire laughed, really laughed, for the first time in what felt like years. Later that week, Claire came home to a surprise. Sophie had painted the wall near the kitchen. A mural of forest clearing, all soft green shadows and morning light. Liam had helped. His handprints dotted the base like fallen leaves. At the center of it all was a tree. Small, bare, but growing. Sophie handed Claire a note that simply read, "For the place that made me bloom." Claire didn't speak, just hugged her. There were still hard days. There were nights Sophie sat by the window with tears she couldn't explain. Days when Claire felt the weight of unpaid bills like stones in her pocket. But now, they carried the weight together. And in that togetherness, something unspoken had begun to heal. One evening, as the sky turned lavender, Sophie placed a second chair beside the window. "For the stories," she said, "the ones we haven't told yet." And Claire understood. It wasn't about the past anymore. It was about the space they were building for the future. A space where Sophie could play her music, where Liam could grow without fear, where Claire could finally exhale. As summer neared, Sophie began teaching violin to neighborhood kids in the park. She charged nothing, just asked them to listen. And they did, wide-eyed and wild-haired, holding borrowed instruments like they were holding magic. Sometimes she'd look up and see Claire watching from a bench, coffee in hand, and smile like the sun was inside her. One afternoon, as the children packed up their things, Sophie pulled Liam aside. "Want to learn?" He nodded. "Then I'll teach you, but slowly, with patience, like someone once gave me." Liam held the bow clumsily, but with reverence. Claire watched him from under shade of the willow tree, her heart both aching and full. That night, Sophie sat at the kitchen table writing a new letter, not to her family, to herself. "Dear girl who ran, you were scared, but you were brave too. And you didn't give up. You found something better. You found home." She folded it, placed it in a glass jar, and buried it beneath the rosemary plant. A little ritual, a quiet closing. Claire saw her do it, but didn't interrupt. Some things didn't need explanation, only witnessing. By July, Sophie had signed up for community college classes. Art, music theory, child development. "I think I want to work with kids," she said. "Ones like me, ones who don't quite fit." Claire's eyes softened. You'd be perfect. Sophie smiled. Because I know what it's like to be found. And then one sleepy Sunday morning, as the sun crept through blinds, Sophie made pancakes, blueberry, burn on one side. Liam sat cross-legged on the counter. Claire read from a book she started 3 times but never finished. And Sophie, without warning, said quietly, "I think I'm going to write a children's book." Claire looked up. "About what?" Sophie shrugged. "A girl who disappears. But not because she's lost. Because she's looking. And does she find what she's looking for?" Sophie smiled. "She finds who she's looking for." Claire nodded. "That's the only kind of story worth telling." The rosemary bloomed in late summer. Small, purple flowers like quiet triumphs. And every time Sophie passed it, she'd run her fingers along the leaves, inhaling, remembering, rooting. If this story touched you, subscribe or share where you're watching from.